Okay, we're live now.
Okay, thank you, Spencer. Welcome everyone to our Planning and Heritage Committee meeting for February the 24th. Call the meeting to order. Declarations of conflict of interest. I see none. Thank you. Approval of the agenda. I'll need a mover and a seconder. Moved by Mayor Brown, seconded by Councillor Yankov. All those in favor of that? Thank you. Adoption of the minutes for Friday, February the 4th. I'll need a mover and a seconder for that. Moved by Mayor Brown.
Councillor McLeod.
Yes.
Are we talking about the closed door session ones or the open ones? I think it was open, and I had messaged Ellen this morning that when the mayor had brought up the height.
Bonus height.
And then I had commented that this would be helpful for the Porthouse project. That wasn't included in the minutes. And Ellen gave me the quote that I said and thought I should bring it up at the meeting, because I do think it probably belongs in the minutes.
Were we in the open or closed at that point?
Ellen might be able to answer that. I don't remember. I think it was open, wasn't it, Your Worship?
It was. Yeah. Friday's meeting didn't go closed. Everything was open.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay.
Gotcha. Yeah.
So, Mr. Chair, we're under business arising from the minutes.
Okay. So let's check on it.
Adoption.
Yeah, let's adopt it first. So moved by Mayor Brown, seconded by Councillor McCabe this time.
So I'll reflect that change. I'll just add that paragraph from Councillor Yankov and then do the approval. Okay.
Okay.
Oh, okay. Good.
Okay. So any business arising from those minutes?
Just, Mr. Chair, if you go to the minutes, I have them in front of me now, and Aaron Stafford's discussion on the lot sizes and accommodating more, whether secondary units, apartment units, or garden suites. This discussion I've been attending over the last couple of days, the National Housing Supply Summit. There are other jurisdictions, i.e. City of Yellowknife. I think I emailed that off to all members of this committee.
Yes, I think I've seen it today.
To take a look at what they're doing in Yellowknife. Lisa Helps, who is the mayor of Victoria, they're also, their city or their municipality is looking at providing more units, more density on residential units. And I have, I think, Mayor of Calgary or one of the councillors from Calgary that's part of this summit. She will be sending me something about trying to connect with our planning department to discuss about ways and means of addressing affordable housing and looking at different options. So, you know, if there's one tool that we can use to address the affordable housing issue, Mr. Chair, that is our zoning and development bylaw, and that's what we did with the STR framework. So if we're looking at another tool in the toolbox, that is this issue of discussing or private, maybe providing a public information center, a public information meeting or a public consultation on this issue. And I'd like to put that out there, and maybe at the next meeting look at the possibilities of how we might want to do it. A public information meeting or a public consultation on lot sizes. I know there's some issues about it, but I just wanted to bring that to your attention, Mr. Chair.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that, and there is options there for sure. When you mentioned Vancouver and you mentioned Calgary, they're quite used to having space in a small area where we're still very fortunate here. So as long as we do the public process, I think that's the main thing. And
that's all I'm asking.
Yeah, I think that's the best avenue, and we'll talk to Alex on that. Yeah, moving forward.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much. Any other business arising from the minutes? I see none. Okay, so I go on to our discussions. We've got 3 items before going into close. The first one would be the update on the swimming pool covers, and Alex, you got the floor.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chair. You can hear me?
Yes.
Okay, so look, on the swimming pool covers, the issue is that there is a new product out now that is There's always been swimming pool covers. They've been historically been used just to keep heat in pools. This new technology is providing an opportunity to put a solid, very rigid cover over a swimming pool, and if the swimming pool cover is on and locked, there are citizens, residents asking that if we deem that to be sufficient, that they would prefer then not to put up the fence, which is a requirement in the zoning bylaw. We dealt with this in the past. We had somebody that had requested that. We had done quite a bit of research on it. I looked as extensively as I could, but there's at least 12 to 1,500 municipalities in the country. So we put out some requests on these large websites asking people who had either changed their bylaw to deal with this issue. Got very little feedback. The only place that the only issue that came up was the province of Alberta, who has a very rigid safety code, which is similar to the National Building Code, but it's called the Safety Code. Did quite a bit of research on this, and they were willing to, they changed the provincial bylaw or provincial requirement to allow for these covers instead of a fence. But there was a lot of there's code issues here. There's certification for the type of cover that's used. So at that time, on the last go around on this, our feeling was if the province wanted to introduce a similar safety type code that involves a lot of research and before you make any amendments, this isn't a standard land use issue. The issue isn't the fence; it's the safety around the having a fence around your property as opposed to using these covers. So we did quite a bit of research on it. There's insurance companies involved in it. There's lawyers involved in it. There's the city's legal obligation involved in it. If there is a standard for a cover, who is going to sign off on that cover? The building inspectors don't deal with covers. It's not in the National Building Code, so they're reluctant to deal with it. So there's a lot of issues going on here, but I would just throw out, it is new technology. Typically, when it came up last, I had asked if someone could provide to me any municipality who had responded to being sort of the first to make some changes. Again, I just don't know the answer to that. I couldn't find a municipality. That doesn't mean that one doesn't exist. So that, at a high level, is the issue that's going on, and that's where we were. And that's just the overview. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Alex. Before I open up the floor, I just had one question. So, when was the last time, Alex, that we had a discussion with the province on this?
Well, we went down and we met with the province on it. We told them that see, the issue here is that usually a planning issue is not safety related. It's the location of a building. It's just the placement. The National Building Code and the Fire Code and all of those other codes get into the safety, and we rely on them. So it's just the fence, because fences are in zoning bylaws. That's the reason it's in the zoning bylaw, and it's in most zoning bylaws. It's a very standard provision. I just checked the city of HRM, Halifax Regional Municipality. They took it out of their zoning bylaw. They had a separate bylaw that their bylaw enforcement officers administer separately from planners, but it still has the same provision in there, and it's very, very detailed about the self-latching gate, and you need the fence around it, and there's no ability to vary that. In the HRM example, they indicate you can vary bringing a pool closer to a property, and the pool house closer to a property, but they do not allow for, at least in HRM, the varying of the fence around the property. So this is a little bit more complicated, I think, than, I spent quite a bit of time on it. The mayor asked me to call Red Cross. I called them 3 times. I asked if they could give me some direction, whether they thought it was a good thing or a bad thing. All 3 times they responded that they would follow up with me. I didn't hear anything back. So that's where it is, and it's really the issuance of it's a standard. It's a safety standard as opposed to the fence. The fence is one component of it. It has to do with doing your due diligence if you're an adjacent property owner. On the other issue that we were dealing with in town, I got numerous calls from the adjacent property owner that was very concerned that this property that we were dealing with before didn't have a fence around it. They were very upset, and they wanted us to enforce our bylaw. So, again, it's not. I guess I'm just indicating it's not a simple answer to this. And again, if I'm not even certain that planning staff are qualified. We may have a piece of it, but there's a lot more pieces to this. There's again some kind of safety code requirement. Somebody's got to sign off on it that type of cover meets some kind of a standard, which we typically don't do. We rely on existing codes that are prepared at a national level, and in the case of Alberta, they have a safety standard that was prepared at a provincial level. So that's where we are. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
And just on Alberta, Alex, so did they put the bylaw in place? Was it more for hot tubs, or did it cover both hot tubs and pools?
Well, to my knowledge, when I did some research on it, they were dealing. You've got to look at I have lived in Alberta, and it's not a whole lot different than down here, but they don't have a long season, so they don't have a lot of swimming pools. Right. But they do have a lot of hot tubs, and the issue was they got into this issue on hot tub covers because kids could stand on them, and they needed a standard for that. Well, then because there was a standard for that, then they got into the standard for a pool cover that went over a pool because they kind of put it together in that same category as a hot tub cover. But when I called out there and was trying to deal with their building inspectors out there, there would be lots of pools in Alberta, but it's not something they deal with a lot. They have a short season out there for like pools are for more of a temperate season. Southern Ontario, Montreal, Southern Canada is more inclined to have swimming pools. So they just didn't have a lot of experience because I asked them how that was working for them, and again, there's lots of building inspectors, but the few that I spoke to basically said that it wasn't a big issue for them because they didn't get a lot of applications for swimming pools. Hot tubs, they did.
Okay. Any questions, folks? Alana, Yanko, please.
Thanks. Terry, I don't think Alex answered your question. I wouldn't mind getting an answer to that first. And that was, if Alberta is doing it and the application process is the same, whether it's a pool or a hot tub, they must be getting a lot of applications for hot tubs. And maybe I missed it, Alex. I apologize. I just didn't hear the answer. I just didn't hear an answer. I heard a lot of talking, but I didn't hear an answer.
Yeah, sorry. They clearly in Alberta they deal with hot tub covers as well as swimming pool covers, and they will allow you. But they also put a safety standard on both of them. There's a safety standard. Somebody's got to go in and read the labels and say that this is the standard. Now, as easy as that is, but that standard flows from a provincial regulation. So you go in, the province says it'll be this certain standard, you must meet it for both, and if you have it, you get your permit. But they also, it's embedded inside of a very comprehensive, detailed, lots of research in it from their perspective in regard to what their requirement will be. What is that standard? We don't have the ability. Our building inspectors don't change standards in the National Building Code. They don't change standards for the fire code. These are national standards, but you can have a provincial standard. So if I wasn't clear, we had directed the previous person that wanted one of these that if they could get the province to do something similar, we would adhere to it. But because they can bring in this much more rigorous review, right? Because there's a lot of different issues there's legal issues, insurance issues, liabilities against the city, what the adjacent neighbors that have these pools around them, what they think, and it's not like a variance, an easy type of a variance scenario, because we don't know what that standard would be. Somebody could take the standard that came out of Alberta, but that's again, it's embedded in a much more rigorous and comprehensive document. They would have spent a lot of money on researching this, and they have their reasons why they were comfortable with it, but it's just very hard to kind of pluck that standard out at a municipal level. When we dealt with this initially, I did mention to the people at that time that if they could find another example of a municipality that dropped their fencing requirement in favor of these covers, that I would certainly look at it. They weren't able to provide it. They did direct us to Alberta. I'm not saying that those municipalities don't exist out there, but it just takes an incredible amount of time to find these, find the answer to this. And again, it should be dealt with under some kind of an issue of safety as opposed to land use. We tend to deal with variances for use in a building, planning, setbacks from a property line, a number of things like that, but we don't get into safety.
Okay, Councilor McKay.
Thank you, and I appreciate the discussion because, I know that these pool covers are very progressive and they're deemed very safe. I guess, who decided on the fence for safety? Is that a province thing or is that a municipal thing?
No, that's in most zoning bylaws. It's a long-standing issue that's in a zoning bylaw that a pool needs to be properly fenced with a self-latching gate. It's a pretty standard requirement in most municipalities.
Okay,
so it's not unique to us.
No, I know that. But it's under the planning because it's a fence. We're saying we've created that in our own city bylaws. But is that a provincial requirement for safety? If you were to go out to Orwell Corner, do they have to have a fence around their pool?
They don't. You don't have to do anything outside the city. I mean, you have a lot more flexibility. They don't have a whole lot of zoning outside the city. In fact, there is no zoning outside the city. It's in under a comprehensive planning area, so you have a lot more flexibility. But in cities, most cities have the same standard requirement.
Well, and that's okay. So if we had it where it was either or, would the city be liable for some reason? Like, is there a reason why we're not open to looking at these hard covers? And I'm not saying I'm in favor, I'm not in favor, I'm just asking the questions. Like, are we any more liable if they have a cover that's proven to be safe versus a fence that could be unlatched? Like, I get leaving, you could go answer the phone, the pool cover could be open, but I could leave for 3 weeks and someone could come up on my patio and get my pool too. So I'm just wondering.
Well, I guess the issue is that there's a lot of different manufacturers out there that they would be sort of dealing with various different standards. What standard do you apply and who applies it? I'm a planner. I'm not a safety person. And I spoke to the building inspectors today, and they're reluctant to get involved in it because they enforce the National Building Code. Randy McDonald enforces the National Fire Code. And that's what they're doing in Alberta. They're relying on a provincial safety code that this has been reviewed in detail and embedded in, and it's a part of the country. Again, I can't speak. I mean, I'm speaking in generalities, but they don't have as many requests for swimming pools as we do in southern Canada.
And I appreciate that, and I think there is a difference between like a leaf cover that people would put on their pool that's not. And these covers that apparently can drive a car on. Like and I appreciate who's going to determine that safety factor. And I don't know the answer, and I don't know if there is an answer. I just think progressively, I think things are moving. And I was curious as if, are we liable some way? Do we have to have that? If we didn't have the fencing in the bylaw around a swimming pool, would that make the city liable if we didn't have that in our zoning and development bylaw?
Well, I think if there was an issue, and I'm not a lawyer. This is the problem with it. There's legal issues, there's insurance issues, and there's safety code issues, and then there's planning issues. The problem would be if something very unfortunate happened in the pool, and the lawyers on the other side said the majority of cities in the country all have a fence requirement around the pool, and you don't put those provisions in. For fences in the city, we don't require anybody to have a fence. That's the only requirement on fences that we have in there, is that it has to be around the pool for safety purposes, to keep people out of your property. and it's really somewhat implying that it's for your due diligence. You've done your due diligence. Whether somebody walks in, opens up the fence, or goes over the fence, you've done your best to mitigate the risk of someone coming onto your property. So, like I say, it's not a straightforward. It's not a standard planning issue.
Right.
I think we will be dealing with this more and more, just so you know, in the future, because this is the new way.
And
look, I'm clearly prepared to monitor. All I need is one jurisdiction that has done it, and then I can look at both their background report or their research on it. But I haven't been able to find it yet. But that doesn't mean it doesn't exist. Like the mayor's on the FCM. There's, what is it, Your Worship, 1,500 municipalities in this country that are members of FCM. So it's hard for them. It's hard to do that level of research. But if you look online and just doing relatively cursory reviews, it's not easy to find where people have waived that. You're right; it could change in the future, but right now I'm just not finding where that's been done. But if somebody points me in that direction, I'll look at the research. I could bring it back to you, but I haven't found that yet. But again, I don't have reams. We have limited time on any of these reviews. We did spend a considerable amount of time on it the last go round.
Yeah. And Mr. Chair,
yes.
these covers are $25,000 minimum.
Yeah.
Like, they're just not something you buy on a Canadian Tire shelf. The other thing too, the other issue here, Alex, Sarah Woodgate, who was on this FCM National Housing Supply Summit, I'm going to have her contact us. We'll ask her to find out who in that department, planning department in Calgary, as an example, can we speak to about this issue? Because I think you're having issues trying to connect with someone in either Calgary, Red Deer, Edmonton, Manning, Alberta, Lacrete, but at least I think we have a contact that we can follow up on, Mr. Chair.
Yeah, the issue in Alberta is that it's no problem because you're allowed to do it in Alberta. But it's just a matter of, I was asking, what I wanted to do was speak to some of the building inspectors who had some experience with it, and then asking them, are they the ones that are signing off on these pool covers, or are they dealing with it under the safety code? And the few people that I was able to contact, they basically said, they didn't have a lot of experience with that part of the safety code, not the National Building Code.
Okay. Councilor Yanko.
Thank you, Chair. Because I know that the entire province of Alberta, and I know we've already talked about this, they amended their complete ruling around that, and your option now was fence or a safety certified pool cover. And then in terms of insurance, I randomly talked to 4 different insurance companies, and they don't have any rules around giving people insurance, whether you have a fence or no fence, whether you live in the city or out in the country. So I can't see why. I can't see how the liability would go on to the city. And I'm sure there's a lot of extra work that would need to be done, but I kind of tend to agree with Councillor McCabe in that we now have two different, properties that are looking for this amendment. So I would like to see us proceed in a way that we can get some proper information, because I don't think this is going away.
Right. So if I may suggest, if Alex, you could reach out to your counterpart at the province, who may also have a counterpart in Calgary that might be able to shed some light on.
The province has made it very clear. Sorry, Mr. Chair. The province has made it very clear that it's a municipal issue. They're not dealing with it.
Okay. So really though, Alex, it's not, because of the standards, right? The city what we can consider important is our bylaw with fencing. But even if we were to drop that and say you could have these pool covers, who is going to be the standard to say that? Who's going to set the right?
My only other suggestion is that because this involves a lot more review the same as they did in Alberta. They would have spent a lot of money. They have a whole big robot. The National Research Council in Ottawa reviews the National Building Code. So every 5 years, the code is updated. Something that's updated in 2025, for example, would have been reviewed for 7 years. That's how long they review these things. So there's a lot of review and research. It's the research that goes in behind it.
Right.
If you really wanted to look at it, I mean, you can. I would find out what it would, who we should even go to get an opinion on this that's qualified to lay that out. But that's going to be expensive. You're talking tens of thousands of dollars to get this answer, and I'm trying to be as accommodating as I can. But on the other hand, I give you advice on planning issues. Yeah. This is beyond planning.
Yeah. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And we'll
Mr.
close
Chair, Tina Lococo, she's now with the PEI, Prince Edward Island Bar, and also she's has some planning expertise. Maybe her and Alex, and along with this Sarah Woodgate that I mentioned, we could rally together and see what we can do. But Tina has, Ms. Lococo has experience in this, maybe in Midland, Ontario. So let's try to do it in a subgroup and then take it back.
Yeah, I think because it's more than just a planning issue, right? We've got some safety issues and stuff that has to be dealt with as well. But I think if we at least let Alex determine as to where he goes to figure that safety part of it out. What is the standard, and is it going to be a remote control cover, or whatever, right? But there needs to be someone take that lead, and I don't know if it should be the municipality. It should be more of a provincial thing, I thought. But anyway, Councillor Yankoff.
Thank you, Chair. If I'm hearing Mr. Forbes correctly, he's not even sure if it's actually a planning issue. So why don't we find out where this belongs in the municipality instead of just going around and around and have this time next year that we're still talking about it.
So I think the direction forward will be Tina, Alex, and maybe even the planning down on the province, have a discussion, and the fire chief, those that are involved with making a decision on this, to kind of put some meat on the table here so we can move forward and tell our residents yes, no, maybe, or but I think what we need to determine is it's probably a bigger issue than just the municipality. But if Alex, you're good with that, the rest of us are good with that, let's move on with that. I think, but trying to find out something out of Calgary would be great as to how they went about doing it.
Yeah, again, it's not Calgary. It's the province of Alberta.
Alberta,
so
sorry.
The rest of them, the municipalities are all fine. They're all geared up. They're ready to go. But it's how they arrived at that. All they're doing is when they issue a permit in Alberta, they're saying, as per the safety code of Alberta and the standard put inside the safety code, the same as we do on the National Building Code, at every building permit, you say that you must do this because of this code, and this is why. And Randy McDonald, the fire chief, says the fire code, you will do it under this section of the code because this applies. We don't really have that, and typically municipalities don't create safety code standards. They adopt them in their entirety.
Through the province, yeah.
Right.
Okay, Councillor McCabe, and then we'll try and wrap this one, guys.
Yeah, no, I was just going to say, and I know we have the requirements there, but like a lot of things, sometimes nobody's going out to check every fence that people are applying for in our when they put in an application to put a pool in anyway. I think there is lots of room for this. I think it is good to go back. I think some of our fellow councillors would like the opportunity to have discussion at that level. So maybe once we know where and who and how, that would be the next step for this.
Yeah, I think what I'm hearing here basically, there's Alex is telling us that the fence bylaw is one thing, but there's the whole standardization, and it would be nice if the province would give us some help on this in one way, shape, or another. But we'll let Alex take it and run with it and go from there. One last question, Councillor.
Just one more comment. Can we at least put some sort of timelines on this, metrics, so that we're not waiting 6 months? We seem to wait a long time, and I know everyone's busy, and I respect that. But summer's coming and people are gonna want answers, like, can we put like a 1 month on this so that our next meeting, that we have some answers?
Well, I think it would be tough to put them under the gun this time, but what I would suggest is that by the next meeting, that our safety, fire chief, Tina, and Alex have a meeting to suggest how to go about what is the next step, the safety side of things, where do we go, where do we search this, and get something back
Right,
to us.
it wouldn't be, the fire chief has no interest in, it's not one of his codes, so he's not required, but, Tina and I can discuss it. We can follow up at the next.
Who's in charge of safety?
Pardon?
Who's in charge of safety codes?
Well, that's just it. We don't, the province of PEI doesn't have a safety code. That's the issue.
Okay.
That's the issue. And they seem to have no desire to want to adopt a safety code. So, this issue isn't embedded in the National Building Code. It's not embedded in the fire code. That's why they did it under a very comprehensive and very well-researched regime out in Alberta, which deals with, it's called the Provincial Safety Code, which deals with a myriad of things, including this particular issue.
Okay, cool. Okay, so we'll let you and Tina move forward on that, okay?
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Oh, sorry. Did you have something else, Alex? No?
No, I'm good, thank you.
Okay, good, thank you. Okay, guys, thank you very much. B is the strategic plan and official plan process, and the including an RFP award, and the endorsement process. So, Alex, I guess you want to take the lead?
Yeah, so it's just a matter of that we're out to RFP on the official plan and the corporate strategic plan. We are trying to work with all of the committees because of tight timelines on this. It's always brought up earlier. Everybody's busy. The consultants are, they would like more time to respond to them, and so we're trying to accommodate that aspect of things to get as many people bid on it as possible. But so they keep asking for more time, but we have limited time to push that out because it has a ripple effect with all of the other time frames. So our other concern is that when they all come back in and we review them and score them and we find the appropriate consultant, I think it needs to go through 3 different committees and then finally get off to council. Well, we don't have enough time to award. So I think what we're looking for from the committee today is just an indication of when that is scored. We will be sending out by email a little bit of an overview in regard to who we're going to be recommending. We'll do that with all the committees at the same time, and then it will be forwarded to council. So because these committees meet at different times, so it would take us a month possibly to get this thing through. And we're just the purpose of having this discussion today is just to give you the heads up that we're under a little bit of pressure to score this thing, get it back to you folks. Really, when I say you folks, I mean council. But on the committee side, we will be sending out to you an email just indicating with a little bit with a recommendation on who we're recommending, so we can streamline that to get it back to council in a timely manner. I'll defer if I missed anything to Tina in regard to what we're looking for from the committee, but I think that's it.
Okay. Did you want to add something there, Tina, before I open up the questions, or are you good?
Sure. I'll just maybe I'll just simplify it a bit. We met with the chairs of the various committees that are involved. We agreed to a process, and we wanted to make sure to be open and transparent about what that process would be. We're bringing it through each of the committees now to get confirmation that you're comfortable with the process going forward. And as it stands now, we are looking at March 10th would be the date that you would be receiving our recommendation and to get your endorsement from the Planning and Heritage Committee. We would also be seeking endorsement from the Strategic Initiatives Committee as well on the same day, so that we are able to bring those 2 endorsed recommendations through to finance, and then finance is going to have a tight schedule as well and have that back to us by the morning of the 10th, no later than the morning of the 10th. And then we will be able to have it on the council agenda Mayor, for the 14th of March for final award.
Okay. Mr. Mayor,
Yeah, Mr. Chair, yeah, is that meeting going to be virtual or are we going to be in person on the 14th? Do we know yet?
We're going to be in person, I believe.
Yeah, I think, and I want to make sure, I'm just going over the email. I'll bring that up under the next item under C.
Yeah.
Tina, an email was sent out about the organizational review process that's part of the strategic plan. I've not seen the terms of reference for this RFP. Like, are you talking about an organizational review of each of the departments, an organizational review of the elected officials? Then I'm also concerned that we initially started off with the money, with the funds coming from the gas tax transfer, or the gas tax fund, now called the building fund transfer, to look at the official plan, and we added the strategic plan. Now, we are going to keep these in tandem. That's my first question, correct? They will be in tandem. One won't be overriding the other.
Okay. Through the chair to the mayor, there's actually a couple of questions there, so I'll start with your very first one, which was in reference to an organizational review. One is very separate from the actual strategic planning process. So when you're talking about the organizational review that was discussed at the strategic initiatives level today, that is an overview and an organization and an operational review in terms of how we deal with our bylaws, policies, and procedures, and how we review them, renew them, repeal them, keep track of them. That this is an internal organizational thing that we're working on, because as I've entered the city, I'm going to be taking over some of the legal and risk management and trying to centralize those services, and also our coordination with our general counsel. So that's an internal process. So I believe what you're referring to is our records clerk sent out an email asking for strategic initiatives to take a look at the bylaws that fall under them to see if there are any of immediate concern or things that they would like us to look at. So I can only assume that that's probably happening around the board, because what I did ask is, as part of that series of refresh and renewal, are there any bylaws that council feels that need to be addressed in the short term? So that's what that is. So,
yeah, but on that organizational review, one of the, and Councillor McLeod, you were around the table, I believe, with Human Resources. I asked about an organizational review of the corporation back in 2019, and everyone said, no, we're not doing that right now. We'll look at maybe planning. We might look at police. But again, an organizational review for me is not about the bylaws. It's about, are these entities working the way they should be to maximize the service that they give to our citizens? So are we going to be looking at that, or is it just the bylaws? Is that what is that's all you're looking at? The organizational review.
No, to be clear, what I'm doing in terms of looking at the bylaws is part and parcel of trying to centralize the deliverance of legal and risk management services for the city. That is a very small piece of an overall organizational review or restructuring if it goes that way. In terms of organizational review and restructuring, every DCAO and CAO and every lead or senior management of an organization are constantly under, hopefully, looking at their organization in ways that things can improve, looking for efficiencies, looking for how staffing requirements and things of that nature. That's an ongoing process. As for an absolute overhaul of our organizational structure, if that were to occur, that would occur in tandem with the CAO and myself taking a look at what's going on, as well as what flows out of the strategic planning process, because that is going to act as a guide for where is the city going in terms of its overall purview and where it would like to see itself in strategic priorities. And it's those things that are there to guide things such as an organizational overhaul if that occurs. So did I explain that? Do you understand the difference between what I'm doing with the bylaws and the policies? And you're muted, sir.
So what you just said, again, if I had an opportunity to look at the terms of references, what we're going out for an RFP, because anyone that's going to look at this RFP will want to look, they want to see the parameters. We haven't seen the parameters as a committee, as a standing committee for planning and development, and I don't think the standing committee for strategic priorities or intergovernmental cooperation has seen the terms of references. So are you going to hand that out before we, or can you pass that, email that to us so that we can get a look at what we're going at, or what we're going to look at going forward with this strategic plan and a overview or comprehensive review of our official plan?
Certainly. I mean, it's all public. It's all public record. I mean, ever since it hit the street a few weeks ago, it's on public record. So you can access that anytime, but I'm more than happy to email you a copy. Not a problem.
Okay.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor, and Tina, thank you very much. So for today, we're just more or less looking for our committee's endorsement to follow the process in which Tina has and Alex has outlined, and we'll be getting the email, and then we'll go from there.
Yeah.
Is everybody okay with that? Along with what the mayor has requested.
Thank you, sir.
We're all good. Okay. So moving on from this process, then we go on to the COVID-19 incentives discussion, and the mayor had brought up about council. I haven't read that email thoroughly.
Mr. Chair, it says again. I thought, I believe, unless I'm reading it wrong, the province is lessening its stranglehold on the community by asking or stating that we will be allowing more groups to get together. The Legislative Assembly now, there's a gallery that's open to visitors. But in this email from Mr. Kelly, council and committee meetings, which I think would fall under discussion of planning-related COVID-19 incentives, will continue to be held virtually until further notice. I think, guys, we have to get back to, sitting around the room, because I think that some of us know that sitting in the same room, going eye to eye, listening to each other, maybe not all the time, that it provides a better forum for discussion and debate. So again, I know it doesn't fall under the purview of this committee, the standing committee, Mr. Chair, but I think I want to bring that up to Mr. Kelly to say, I thought we were going for especially on some of the planning meetings, individuals like to show up and give their opinion. You know yourself, I've been at many of them. It's just allows people to be with people.
Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
So, okay, thank you. Alex, from a planning perspective and what Peter had released today, where are you at with things as far as opening up?
Look, I'll defer to them. They've spent a lot more time on reviewing this. I mean, there's a lot of moving parts. There's the public health office and all of those directives. I just I keep my focus on the planning issues, and then somebody else can advise me in regard to what is the best approach in regard to dealing with this.
Okay, maybe or maybe Tina, you might have a little addition there to what Peter's email had said today, and the cautious approach we're taking. Sure.
Thank you, Chair. One of the things that the CAO and myself have been taking a close look at is trying to balance a return to the workplace along with CPHO guidelines and occupational health and safety. So we're not only looking at what the province is doing or the guidelines that are provided, but we're also taking a look at, as employers, how do we protect our staff and council and also the public. We're trying to strike that balance, and we believe we have struck that balance with a return to work plan that is going to be put in place. Now, the communication to which the mayor spoke was an internal communication. So I'm not going to speak to that today, but there is going to be a public-facing communication that is going to lay out very clearly the services and other things that are going to be provided and which are already being provided in some instances. And that communication will be following very shortly. So I'm not going to speak to the details of the internal communication that went out today, but there is a public-facing one coming. And as for the committee and council meetings, yes, a decision was made as an operational issue to keep those virtual at least for another week or so while we slowly bring our staff back to some semblance of the new normal.
Yeah.
Thank you.
That does make sense. Yeah.
Yeah. And Mr. Chair, I understand that, but again, other provinces, other jurisdictions are moving forward. We have to be moving forward also, because it's now about living with COVID-19 and adapting and pivoting going forward. So I really want to make sure that we get our council and our committee meetings back out into the public, and in a slow process, understand that. But I think that should be a discussion that council has to have too. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
And I think it's a good approach to get staff back in and get everybody familiar and comfortable, and then I think that's probably what he was referring to today. So, but good discussion for sure, and there is a need for us all to get back into the proper places that we belong. So, thank you very much for that. I guess if I can just give everybody a minute here, we'll ask Spencer. We'll need a motion here to move into a closed session and give Spencer a minute to do his thing. So I will need a motion.
Mr. McLeod, sorry. Alex, do you want to discuss about the temporary use for the outdoor patios? Because that's part of the incentives.
Sorry, thank you for bringing that up, Ellen. Look, the downtown merchants sent me a letter just yesterday. I think it was yesterday.
If I could just, so what we're going to do, folks, before we'll just jump down to, before going into close, into introduction of new business, which Alex is now going to explain. Thank you.
So, thank you. Still part of the COVID incentives. That's item 3. Sorry.
It's still part of that. Okay, good. Thank you, Ellen.
Yeah. So in past and during this COVID period, you'll recollect I was to you folks before. Some of the merchants in the downtown, in the interest of trying to keep their businesses alive, wanted to move outside and have outside seating. And the only place, in some cases, they had to do that was in designated parking spots on their property, which you're not allowed to typically do. So I think, and I'm just relying on my memory, which is always, but I think for the last 2 years, what we did is, at your direction, we contacted downtown Charlottetown. We asked them to get they send out a little notice to all of their merchants. It's not only the downtown, there's a few other restaurants who have participated. We bring that to the planning board and then indicate for another season, we'll waive the fact that the parking can be utilized for outdoor seating, and it's related to COVID. So if you're and we didn't charge a fee for that, we put everybody in the one application. So there might be 10 businesses in it. So we send that to planning board. It goes on to council. Council reads the resolution for temporary use to allow that because of COVID would be this upcoming season. And then all of them, are exempted during that period as a temporary use. So I'm just looking for direction because they've asked me for that. Did you want to extend that provision for this season as well to allow merchants to do that? We'll take them as like whether it's 8 or 10 businesses, we'll take them all as a temporary use. Allow that to continue for the upcoming tour season. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Go ahead, Mr. Mayor.
Mr. Chair, I thought this was a police matter. I thought they were responsible for issuing the permits, the temporary permits for outdoor patios.
Right, you're correct, Your Worship. But what they're doing is that's not that. The police deal with on street or in the public right of way. This is when a property owner has 2 or 3 or 4 parking spaces on their property, and they want to cordon off their parking and then put picnic tables or seating in the parking spaces because you can't give up required parking. So, but the only way to do that is through a temporary use variance. So we've been doing it the last couple of years. So it's not in the right of way; it's on their own property, but they're getting rid of their required parking that goes with the building, and they're using it for seating for for anybody that wants to utilize it, outdoor seating.
this would be similar to the restaurant on University Avenue across from the Royal Bank. I know what you're talking. How many applications did we get last year, Alex?
I think there was around 8, and there may have been 2 outside of the 500 lot area. Again, some of them use a portion of their parking lot, like a big parking lot. They cordon it off, but there's typically not a way to eliminate required parking. So this gives them some flexibility, gets them through another season. At your direction, we will do that again, and we will get back to downtown Charlottetown and others that if they make their application, we'll cover the cost. It'll just be one application, but we'll bring a list forward to council, and you folks can deal with it at your level there.
Yeah, I think that's good, but Councillor Yankoff has a question.
I definitely support another year. The thing I worry about is people have invested a lot of money into creating a 2 or 3 month patio area for the tourist season, and then they revert back to parking for the winter months. How do we take it away this time next year when they've put that in place? I mean, they still have some parking. I'm thinking of some of them, particularly downtown, and they've put a healthy little investment in to create that outdoor ambiance. And I'm just wondering, this time next year, can we think about a workaround that these restaurants will be able to continue to do this? Just a thought.
I guess I'll just say that I guess what you're really asking for is a review of our parking bylaw, and it's in relationship to operation. I guess, Alex, would that be correct?
Yeah, I mean, it's we can we'll deal with this year, and then we can think about that for next year. One of the things we could do is we could stop doing it ourselves, covering the cost. We could allow individuals to come in. They could ask for a temporary use. The reason that we're being flexible is that their limits in regard to how many people they could have in the restaurant was so limited that they had to push outside. So there is a good reason to vary that, but when we get back to hopefully better times, that reason kind of disappears. And then, of course, the issue is for some of the adjacent property owners that may not be in the restaurant business, people are parking, maybe taking some of their parking spots. So it is like a lot of planning issues. You can solve one problem, you might create another, but we can certainly look at that heading into next year, anticipating. I think Councillor Yankoff is correct. They're getting used to this flexibility, and how do we ease them off of that, or provide some kind of a transition for them?
Well, Councillor McCabe.
Thanks, Chair. And also, Councillor Yankoff indicating, can we look at that? We've been asked as a committee anyway to look at our bylaws and decide which ones maybe make sense to change a little bit. I mean, the outdoor patios certainly do provide, again, it's a progressive venue, right? People enjoy sitting outside in the summer months, and I think we're supposed to been asked to look at our bylaw list. Maybe now's the time we can look at some of these.
Yeah. I think whatever we do, I think safety's got to be at the front of the bylaw, right? And there's a reason why we had these bylaws, and they weren't put there just because we felt it was a good thing to do. So I think we got to tread kind of slowly as we go along and make sure that we're not causing more problems than we're solving. But anyway, it is something to look at. But for now, I think unless we want to put something, depends what the committee and council wants to go. If we want to put something a little more concrete in approval, saying that this is a COVID related allowance, and that once we open fully in years ahead, that we're going back to our original, and then that might create the idea of us looking at changing our bylaws, and requests will come in from those particular owners. So there'd be no need of a resolution on this, Alex, right? How do we present
I
this?
think, just as long as it's very clear from this call that everybody's in agreement, I can take care of that on your behalf. But it's just a matter of you're going to deal with it later at council. You'll do the exact approving. The only thing that you're indicating to me that to waive the fee for each one of them, and I will process them, and if it comes up later, I'll just indicate that through the direction of the planning committee, I was told to do this.
Yeah, I think we're all in favor, but Councilor Yankoff has one more question.
I'm definitely in favor of that, but I don't want to, I don't want to support a resolution that says that once this is done, we're going back to the old way. I want the door left open because times are changing and you know, people are going to have to continue to do business. And the idea of some of these outdoor spaces on their own property, I think add more good than not. I just don't want to close the door right to say we're going back to the old way after this year. End of story. I wouldn't support that.
Okay, so, but I guess where you and I differ then is what I'm saying is that, you know, we have to look seriously at why we put parking spaces were provided, right? I mean, if they're parking in my lot, or if I got a patio on my lot that normally parks 6 cars, where are those 6 cars parking? And am I hampering somebody else? We seem to have a downtown parking problem as it is. Is this enhancing or is this making it worse? I don't know. That's the type of thing I meant. Like, just have discussion. Make sure we know that we're not causing another problem by continue. That's all. Councilor McCabe, did you have one more question there?
No, it was a comment. It's probably good. I was on mute.
Yeah. Okay. Good. And Mr. Mayor, you got anything else to say?
And Mr. Chair, this is all what we can do.
Yep.
Municipalities don't have a lot of the fiscal firepower the province and the feds have, but this is one way we can help out. Yep. And I believe, Alex, you're dealing with this year, and this is a good news item for this year for sure. And maybe and definitely moving
maybe
on.
More. Yeah. Okay.
Thank you,
I think you got the consensus of everybody there, Alex. So we're good to go on that, and that closes out then number C of our discussion part of the agenda. So we'll need a motion now to move into the closed section as per 119.1 section E of the Municipal Government Act. So moved by Councilor McCabe, second by the mayor. Good. Thank you very much. Oh yes,
Mr.
go ahead.
Chair, I have to go to the other meeting.
Oh, right.
Thank
you very much. All those in favor, going into closed. Good. Thank you very much. I'll give a few minutes here for Spencer to get his thing done there, and he'll let us know when we're